Hi, Cheryl Boyce here again. I've done a few videos regarding contamination. I was a resident at Clovelly Park and I was evacuated in August 2014, so I've been away for nearly 6 years now. And it's amazing since leaving the area that I've recovered amazingly, particularly after Kevin Bucket, our Director of Health, told all of us at a meeting that our sicknesses and illnesses are more likely due to age, lifestyle, genes, and probably the home products that we use, not the chemicals. Not the 4 chemicals that they found around in Clovelly Park. In actual fact, they found over 26 chemicals and they were not disclosed to the residents. There were several of these chemicals, which is in the URS report, which is a nice big thick report. You can apply for that through FOI. And in that report it stated that it included benzene, and I asked Ian Hunter, our Minister for Environment at the time, about the benzene, and that there was no concern about benzene whatsoever. It was in such a low dose. But you read what benzene does to you, and you think about it when it's mixed with 26 other chemicals like TCE, PCE, DCE, vinyl chloride, etc. We exceeded adopted guidelines of lead, of nickel. Read what nickel does to your health. C9 fraction, ethylbenzene, xylene, isopropyl toluene. Now, hexavalent chromium, I think that might ring a bell to a few people. That was the Erin Brockovich movie, hexavalent chromium, that killed a lot of people, that caused cancers and killed children. It may have been in a low reading in our area, in our groundwater, but you combine them with all the other 26 chemicals and you've got one hell of a cocktail that certainly you don't want to be breathing in for any period of time, which comes to another thing. Peter Dolan, the science man of EPA, Mr. Brightspark, and Ian Hunter said, and Kevin Bucket from SA Health said that no one was in any danger to exposure because it would take decades to have any impact on our health. Decades. I don't know if you know what a decade is, but my understanding that 10 years is a decade. I was there for nearly 27 years. And here is these belligerent morons telling us that, we'd have to be exposed for decades. Well, they didn't bother to say, well, how long have you been living here? It's just, oh yeah, you're all safe, it's just low dose, nothing to worry about, it's all under control. You don't have to move, but you can move. That was what we were told. Here there was a state emergency presented earlier, so yeah, it was an emergency evacuation, but they didn't sort of let on too much about that. I've written to Ian Hunter and I requested the initial report that was done of my place supposedly before I left, and I had to apply. Well, my Stephen Marshall, he applied for me through FOI and requested the report to prove to me that my place had been tested when it actually had not. Now, Ian Hunter, that was passed on to Ian Hunter, another bright spark, and this is the report that he sent out. Now, all it says here is, as requested, Mrs. Boyce, as requested, Mr. Stephen Marshall MP, on your behalf, please find attached analysis information held by SA Health on 4 Ash Avenue, household identity number 1. Kind regards, Ian. Now, all this is pages and pages of nothing. But what I did actually notice was all these other chemicals. There's Freon, vinyl chloride, yes. Bromethane, chloroethane, freon again, methylene chloride, chloroform, benzene. Oh, no, Ian Hunter said no. Well, yeah, this one says benzene. It tells me all these other ethanol. It tells me all these other chemicals. Now, hang on. They told us there were 4. Now he sends me this out with all this on here, but it doesn't tell me whose place is or anything else. So that was the proof that I got that my place, that I had 3 canisters sitting in my house. That's the proof. Right. They also sent me a proof of a floor plan of my house, that where these people located these canisters were in my house this day, and I let them in, of course, and they placed these canisters, and while they were there they drew the floor plan of my house. The funny thing is, the floor plan is not my house, totally different to my house. They weren't in my house. Now, if they were in my house standing there, they would have known the right floor plan. I didn't have a back door where they had a back door. They left out the laundry. I had no laundry as far as they were concerned, yet if they were in my house, I would have been standing right next to the laundry. So that was all bullshit. The thing that Kevin Bucket's got very, very wrong, this was the consent form. This is what's in dispute, that clearly states that I consent to the staff from the Department of Health, Housing SA and Environmental Protection Authority, sampling staff, entering my home at a time arranged with me to appropriately locate the collection cylinders to take indoor and possibly outdoor samples as required, and the collection of these cylinders at a pre-arranged time after testing. Right. That was on the 20th of the 9th, 2009. 20th of the 1st, sorry, 20th of January 2009. Now, when I queried Kevin Bucket again last year, I'm still after this report 6 years later. Obviously, they can't provide it, otherwise they would have given it to me, but they can't provide it because it wasn't done. So he writes to me last year and he says, you were visited on the 20th of January 2009. Yes, I was, by 2 men taking, 2 EPA workers taking a soil sample out the front, and then requested, would you please sign this for indoor testing at a later date arranged by you, the convenient to you. So Kevin Bucket says, you were visited on the 20th of January 2000 by 3 government officers, one from the Department for Health and Ageing, which is now SA Health, one from Environment Protection Authority, and one from Housing SA. During that visit, the officers provided you with detailed information about the contamination and the reasons to conduct indoor testing. At that visit, you signed the consent form for the air sampling to occur inside your home, and the officers left you with printed information about the chemicals of concern and the air sampling procedure, and provided you with their contact detail and business cards. Right. No. That's the consent form, and that was signed on in the daytime by 2 guys that did the soil sample, and then they took that away with them, and I requested a copy down the track when I read the URS report and seen that my place had been tested, and it had not. So he said, oh yes, you did, you signed the consent form. So I requested the consent form. Yes, I know. My witness there, I've spoke to her since. She knows that there was none of these other people in the house. She knows there was 2 guys in the driveway. Right. And now he said on that day that all these people in my house, he's got that wrong, because as we know, because I know they weren't there, but I have another EPA report collected under FOI. In this report, it states, unfortunately, after media reports on the 2nd of July 2014, the consultation with residents was brought forward. Representatives from the Environmental Protection Authority, because they were going to visit us late at another time, but they had to bring it forward to the 2nd of July. And that's on video. I've got the video with Channel 7 at my front door. That was the 2nd of July. Right. Representatives from the Environment Protection Authority, EPA, Department of Communities and Social Inclusion, DCSI, that's Housing SA, and Department of Health and Ageing, which is now SA Health. Residential properties in an identified area within Clovelly Park, adjacent to former Mitsubishi Properties premises off South Road on the evening of Wednesday, July 2nd, 2014. That is when they were in my house, Dr. Bucket, on the 2nd of July. I've got a video of that night and I've got the proof in this report that night. Not when you say you're wrong. Right. On the evening of 2nd of July 2014, to advise that public health risk had been identified and the orderly relocation of residents was recommended. They didn't recommend, they said that, was recommended, I guess, because they said we could stay. So it was a voluntary evacuation to occur over a 6-month period while further investigations were undertaken. Right. So, Dr. Bucket, you're full of misinformation, just like your medical misinformation that was given to us, which you're on record as saying there was no testing for TCE and there was no blood test or urine test or anything like that. In fact, there's blood test, urine test and breath test and hair analysis testing for TCE and other heavy metals. You neglected to tell us or inform any residents that we could go and have these tests done. You said there were none. And we have got you on camera saying there is no testing. You lied. Right. That was something else. I've got all these other reports. So they all say that about all this contamination and all these carcinogenic chemicals, which they said there were 4. Now, you think about car manufacturers. We had, in 1959, there was Reckitt's and Coleman. They were pharmaceuticals. So they tipped all their pharmaceutical waste into the ground. Back that time, they didn't know. So fair enough, you have to accept some of that. They didn't know. But that all went into the groundwater. Then we had Chrysler, same thing, tipping crap into the ground. Then we had Mitsubishi that their tanks weren't suitable underground. They had no overflow on them, so the waste, the degreasers and everything else that they used all went into the tank, but it overflowed and went directly into the ground because the tank had no lip around it to catch the overflow. Now, if anybody with any common sense think about a car manufacturer, what do they actually use? They use paints, paint thinners, antifreeze, hydraulic fluids, xylenes, brake fluids. All these are what was going into our groundwater. It wasn't just TCE. That's where all these other chemicals come into the picture. But this is what they're not telling us. This was out the front of my house every winter. That was right at my front. That was my front. That's where they took the soil sample from. That's the front. That is my backyard. That's my backyard, underwater every winter. My foundations in my house were wet. That water came up through the foundations, even though it was lined. It came over the foundation, over the plastic, because the base of the house was underwater. So it got through into the plastic, into the foundations, came up under my floor, which was full of TCE from Mitsubishi that was behind me, and all these other chemicals from Munro's up the road, washed down the hill, straight down the hill, straight down here, and flooded the street. And it always ended up in my yard, nobody else's, my yard. Any wonder it nearly killed me. I had 26 plus chemicals that I was breathing in every winter, because you shut your house up in winter time as a rule. And that was when my dogs were having seizures. That was when I was going numb from the waist down. That's when I ended up having all the stomach cramps, and I got so sick in the last year I just thought you know, the doctors didn't know what was wrong with me. Medically, they couldn't find an answer. Had they tested me for chemicals, any of those chemicals, they would have found that. And I'm sure now, if they went around to, if anyone from Ash Avenue, Clovelly Park, when had hair analysis and some blood and urine and breath tests, they'd test positive for TCE without a doubt. Now we've got nine, as I said, 9 other suburbs in South Australia that are contaminated. But if they're going to rebuild on this new Tonsley Village, then there's going to be, this cycle will happen again, that the innocent people that go and buy property at this new Tonsley Village that's going to be so wonderful and create jobs, they're going to end up with all these chemicals are going to resurface again in the groundwater in decades. And if they're going to have children or think about pregnancy or anything like that, then they're going to be in real trouble, because the 2 children next door to me were both born with heart defects, respiratory, vision, stunted growth, all sorts of learning disabilities, all these problems. They were, both of them, born with them. No real parents, both physically fit and fine, no smokers or drug takers or anything like that. But these poor little children, so we don't know what sort of a future they're going to have. And all the problems that I suffered there, as I said, since I've left, have nearly disappeared. So I'm just one of the fortunate ones. Now, I'm not going to stop until something is, or someone pays for this, and I'm targeting Ian Hunter and Peter Dolan and Dr. Kevin Bucket, because they have misled us. They have purposely misled us. I've got, my place was never tested. They know it was never tested. They did test it when I left, and they found that a metre down I had 11 ppm, which is parts per million of TCE. Now, I saw that. I actually was in that house because I applied for the keys from the Housing Trust, and I saw where they had actually drilled down and took out a piece of cement out of my passageway, a circular piece that was oh so big, and they had the tubes down. They were measuring the obviously the vapours that were coming up. So if that was and that was summertime, so you can imagine in the winter when the groundwater was up, that in the wintertime with my place all closed up, that 11 would have been, God only knows what it would have been. Well, it was extremely high because I was extremely sick and I could taste it. My mouth was burning, my skin was burning, I come out in all blisters on my face, all these issues. And as I said, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, which is amazingly, that's all disappeared. I mean, having an angiogram and clean arteries, but cholesterol readings of 8.4 just didn't make sense to my cardiologist. He couldn't understand why I had a cholesterol. Well, if you read up on all these chemicals, you find that they actually push up your blood pressure, they can push up your cholesterol, they can cause reflux. And also we had 93 square metres of asbestos removed from our behind us around in the Mitsubishi zone. But we weren't informed on the day that that was being removed either. So we all had our windows open and everything, obviously, because it was warm weather at that particular time. Since then we found out. So we had that as well. And also we had, which they never told us about, was the train going up and down for 20 odd years before they changed to electric trains in about, I think they changed to electric trains somewhere in 2013-14. But we had diesel, so we had, where I lived and the corner house, we had the diesel fumes just spewing over our place. So many times a day that train went up and down, up and down, up and down, finished I think at midnight. So they neglected to tell us about that as well. So we copped it from Munros with all the degreasers, we copped it from Mitsubishi and Chrysler's from all the degreasers and carcinogenic chemicals. We copped it from the train with the diesel fumes and fallout from that, which we weren't told about. Now, the other thing I just wanted to mention, that Erin Brockovich posted an interesting little piece on Instagram, and she sent me a copy of this. About 3 EPA workers in Michigan were charged with misconduct in office, commercial offences, tampering with evidence. Now, they were charged and they were jailed. It can be done. And I think I've got enough evidence that I want something done with our guys here, because they're endangering our lives daily. Port Augusta is suffering now at getting no help. We've got Salisbury, Parafield, have been trying to get help for the noise of aircraft from training flights going buzzing around all night long with the noise. They've had no help whatsoever. They've got a lot of sick people out there. They've got a lot of elderly people with cancers. They're suffering. We've got a lady at Campbelltown that I've appealed to Zoe Bettison on 3 occasions now, and she is I can't really say what I think of her. She did help me. She did help me, and that's why I appealed to her, because she helped me. Well, she rang me when, I hope everything's all right and we'll get you out of there. And yes, we'll get you out of there. We'll get you out of the safe zone real quick. But this lady is in Campbelltown, exactly the same situation. Redevelopment of an old wetland, or making it into a wetland, sorry. It was an old market garden, so they've used DDT and all these other chemicals, which I've seen the report, and there are a lot of chemicals that are very similar to what we had in ours. Low readings once again, but her house is full of black mould, and it is a housing trust property. She has been ringing Housing Trust Council, EPA, and she's been targeted as a pest and a crazy woman, and she's got every reason to be crazy, I can tell you, because I know what chemicals do to your immune system, to your central nervous system. They just make you so sick. I had a brain aneurysm as well when I first moved here. I just collapsed. We don't know what's caused that. Now she's having palpitations, numbness, and all these things. I've appealed to Zoe Bettison's moral whatever, to see if, will she step it up and help this lady get out before it's too late. But she said, SA Health's doing everything. Well, SA Health are not. They are actually, they are defaming this woman. If anything, they are defaming her. She has been in hospital, and she's got a very high content of arsenic in her bloodstream. And as I said, she's having rapid heartbeats, she's having irregular heartbeats and everything else. So Bettison, to you, if you don't get onto this, then, and this lady dies, then I'll be straight to the media with the story that I've appealed to you to at least talk to this lady, even go and have a look and see what she's living in, because the place, she has been told, is inhabitable. And she was also told the black mould that's all throughout her house, it's safe. There's nothing to worry about. I've never heard so much bullshit in all my life. Now, she's got walls that are caving in. She's got all sorts of things. The place is not livable. In the winter, all the water comes up the same as my place, and her water is like grey sludge. All her plants are dying, like all my garden died. You saw what the vegetables did to me in the early piece. I got a rash all over my body, my throat. I end up anaphylactic. So this lady's, it's happening is the same to her now, and I have appealed to Zoe Bettison, but she's not going to do a damn thing. She's sitting on her hands. So much for election time. None of these politicians are out there to help any of us. They are quite content to just sit by and deprive us of our rights. There's absolutely no justice being served here for any of us. What else? Yeah, she's the one that I'm really worried about at the moment, that something's going to happen to her. I've been left with residual damage. I've got kidney damage. Obviously, after the brain aneurysm, I've got a few problems. I'm suffering with a lot of headaches and things now as well. My blood pressure's gone back to normal. Funny about that, Mr. Bucket, you know, getting older. I don't know why. How does that happen? My cholesterol's gone down, as I said. I put weight back on from 55 kilos. I went down to something like 43 kilos or something. Something's ridiculous. So all this poisoning around Adelaide is out of control. EPA are trying to covering it up. They are definitely falsifying documents, because I've got absolute evidence right here that they are, and I am going to take this as far as possible. I won't be satisfied until someone pays a price for what they have done. I've actually well, I think I've said it before, I did speak to Erin Brockovich when she was here. I was fortunate enough to sit down and have a meeting with her, so she's been quite helpful to me. And I've also I emailed Jan Schlickman. I'm not sure if you're aware of who he is. He's a lawyer in Massachusetts. That the movie, what was it called? Civil Action was made. John Travolta played his part. I actually contacted him, and he's going to talk to me on the phone. I'm going to mention to him about all these documents. I mean, the laws are different from here to USA, but the fact that they're different, the documents are not truthful, and I can prove that, then I'm going to see what his advice is on that. I think that's all for now, and I will, as I said, Port Augusta's got a battle on their hands now. Ian Hunter made them all the promises under the sun, and Stephen Wade even promised that he was going to do something. I've heard nothing that he's stepped up and done anything either. But the truth always comes to the surface. It always does. You know, you start telling lies, and that's what Kevin Bucket's done, and he's got himself in a knot there. So I think pray for the dead and fight for the living is all we can do. But we will win. We will win this, and I won't be happy until I see at least one person behind bars. Thank you.